I wanted getting shot to feel slightly more impactful. I may have overdone it.
Hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
For years I've started game projects that never went anywhere. After dozens of abandoned projects, I'm building my first multiplayer game from scratch as a solo developer. And this time, I'm determined to see it through. I'll be documenting every step of the journey as I try to finally make it all the way to release. Now that networking is implemented, this week's challenge was to see if I could turn 2 moving squares into an actual game. Continuing on from the hype of last week, I decided to reuse some old assets I had for characters from a previous game as placeholders for my player characters, to help bring them to life a little more. I also made my projectiles spawn from a specific fire point instead of just spawning out of the middle of my players, as each class or ability can be different. I then made my projectiles have a little bit more punch and speed, adding animation for when the bullets hit the target as well. For now it's just a simple red hit splat, but you can see exactly where the players are being hit. While testing this, I realised that my players weren't actually firing directly at my cursor's position. I suspect this is why it felt weird and off as I mentioned previously. Next up, I wanted to make a new reticle cursor, as it felt a lot more appropriate than the default, and is relatively easy to implement. A nice quick win. While it was easy to implement, I was having issues with the cursor point not being in the centre of the reticle, which was a quick fix by updating the cursor's hotspot, so now I have a fully functional custom cursor with correct positioning. I felt like my play area could do with a little bit more life, so I started drawing up and giving my movable object an art asset. I then moved on to starting to build my map outline with the same asset and removed the big green crosshair I had previously been using to give the area depth. Now my players are stuck in the play area, and the movable objects don't fly off to space, which is nice, though I did have to move my spawn locations as the players were getting stuck when spawning in. I also updated my hit particles to only spawn if the bullet hit a player. I'm not sure about you guys, but personally I'm not a huge fan of bleeding walls. I wanted to get it so that my players were flipping around, so they would always be facing the correct direction based on their cursor position. For the moment, that's all the direction I want to give to my players, but in the future, I'll likely look at having the weapons pointed at where my players are shooting dynamically, and possibly adding an up and down direction to my player sprites too, instead of just left and right like I have currently. And absolutely nothing went wrong while implementing this. I also wanted to have my players' firing points swap sides to match, and no longer shoot bullets directly out of their asses. My players could move about, but I wanted to implement some more dynamic movement options. I gave them the ability to roll. Initially I had my rolls designed to push the players in a set direction, and then freeze the players' movement inputs until the roll was finished, or until they hit another object. However, that ended up feeling a little bit janky, and I thought it would be cool to still allow my players to move during their rolls, to allow for some cool emergent gameplay, like rolling around corners. I now have 2 players that are able to roll off cooldown and visually see each other roll, even though it does still look more like a dash currently without any animations. But I'll fix that later. Players respawning was up next. I started off by creating a game manager to allow me to start managing a whole bunch of different settings over the matches, such as respawn points, scores, and match timers. When a player dies, instead of being destroyed, they will have their movement stopped and teleported to the respawn point. Ultimately, I'd like to make it so that a player is looking to respawn, it will find a respawn point that has no players within a certain range, and then it will teleport the player to that respawn point. Something important that I am still missing is a match timer. I added the remaining time and displayed it to all of my players, so they know exactly how long is left in the game, which was another pretty quick thing to implement. With the core system finally in place, I could start making the game look a little bit less embarrassing. I want to start by giving my characters a little bit more life, as the assets I was using before were only temporary. I'm starting off with a very basic character design that I will use as the base for most of my characters. I'll then start working on adding some simple animations for the movement of each limb, as I'm not settled on full character designs just yet. Again, I'm starting off with an old model I used for a previous project. Can you see a running theme? With my new base art created for my character, which to be honest I'm a lot more happy about than the previous art, it's time to start sorting some animations out. I started off with an idle animation, which maybe in hindsight wasn't the best character to start with, as it has a lot of moving parts to the animation, in the chem tank and the tubes. But it is in, and I think it's looking pretty clean for a first draft, especially considering my questionable, shall we say, historic artistic abilities. Having failed GCSE art, I feel like I'm starting to get to a place with my artwork where it's genuinely passable at the very least, but I am by no means an accomplished artist. While I am very happy with my new character design, I'm not so happy with the animations. While they do look okay for the time being, I still feel like they're very static. So I got to work. I blocked out what I would like the skeleton for the animations to be. Then I can use these templates for all of my characters, and overlay their designs on top to match the animations so they all feel fluid. Not all of my characters will share the same exact animations, but this is at least a good baseline to get it started. I have animations for idle and rolling, and I think that makes it a lot more impactful. I did have some issues with the server syncing of the animations again. Yes, I know. I did say it before. Server good, server RPC bad. My players were animated, but I was missing the most important animation. I got to work on some running animations. I think it looks better, and my players can clearly differentiate between rolling and running. I also added a death animation, though again it's very basic. I may very well swap it out for something more like a blood explosion, where my characters get obliterated into a red mist later on, as I think that may fit the theme of the game a bit more. Do you guys like bugs, where players slide around when dead?
Because I sure do love bugs where players slide around when dead, for absolutely no reason at all.
Fixed. And now I made it so my player colliders were also disabled on death too, so bullets weren't hitting dead players anymore. I also added a timer before respawning. Do you guys also like bugs where all of your player animations stop syncing across the server?
And then you spend a few hours trying to troubleshoot and think you're going insane. And then you start looking at the documentation, and then you start questioning your ability as a developer to create anything coherent at all.
Only to find out that restarting Unity fixes the problem, and there was actually not a problem at all. Yeah, me too. Though the bug where players could still move while dead made a second appearance. For real this time. Deathbug 2 Electric Boogaloo. For now, that's all the bugs resolved. I moved on to giving some more feedback to my players when they take damage. It's extremely important and something that I learnt about recently, specifically from these creators. Check them out if you haven't already. Things like screen shake and hit stops are super important. Though I do feel like hit stops in multiplayer games freezing all of my players when they get hit just wouldn't work out too well. Instead of hit stops, I just made my players red. And shook the camera. Though I had the values off by just a small fraction to start. My players had health, and they could take damage. But how much damage were they taking? I added some damage number text. Each time my players take damage, a damage number shows up, and it says exactly how much damage they've taken. Initially my damage numbers were spawning very stacked, and it felt super unclear. You could easily miss the numbers. I added some variants to the spawn locations, so they would all spawn around the character instead of just clumped up in one spot. It's basic to start, and I will probably expand on it in the future, to have things like bigger damage numbers for bigger hits and damage type colours. Next, I was contemplating adding a turret to the game. Why a turret, you ask? Aren't there more important things to be doing at this stage? And you would be 100% right. Here's my turret. I wanted the turret to be able to track players within a set range and fire projectiles towards their location. Pretty basic stuff. I got it working and shooting projectiles, but that revealed another bug with my game. If a player died while running, they would continue moving forwards. I hadn't seen this one before as I was previously controlling both players at the same time. But now that I had an external damage source, it was evident that I had a problem. Also, my turret was just shooting with an infinite range. Now that my turret was correctly losing targets that went out of range and was no longer tracking its own bullets as potential targets, I made the turret follow its current target's position. It tracks my players within range, will always attack the first target that was within range, and rotates to face its current target. I'd finally gone from 2 network squares to a somewhat playable game. Next time, I'm building a character class system, improving the art and animations, and adding ability timers. And honestly, I think this might be the first week where everything just goes smoothly. This game is ultimately being built so I can play it with my friends and my community. So if you'd like to be a part of that journey, come and join us on Discord. I'll be sharing progress updates, discussing ideas, and eventually running playtests as development continues. There is a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next update.